The morning sun cast golden rays across the deck of the research vessel Horizon. Tom Miller leaned against the railing, watching the team prepare the deep-sea submersible for another dive. After 3 weeks at sea studying the unique ecosystem of the Mariana Trench, they had made several exciting discoveries, but Tom felt something big was still waiting for them in the darkness below. "All systems check complete, Dr. Miller," called Mark, the submersible operator. "We're ready to go when you are." Tom nodded and grabbed his equipment bag. "Let's make this dive count. We only have 2 more days before we head back to shore." The submersible, named Explorer, could hold 3 people. Today, Tom would be joined by Mark and Susan, the team's marine geologist. As they squeezed into the small craft, Tom reviewed their plan. "We're going to check out that unusual rock formation we spotted on the sonar yesterday," he explained. "It showed some strange readings that don't match any known geological patterns in this region." The team sealed the hatch and Explorer was lowered into the water. As they descended into the darkness, the outside pressure grew, and the temperature dropped. Their powerful lights cut through the black water, revealing a world few humans had ever seen. Hours passed as they carefully navigated the underwater terrain. At 35,000 feet below the surface, they approached their target area. "I'm getting those strange readings again," Susan said, watching her instruments closely. "Whatever this is, it's not a natural formation." "Look there," Mark pointed suddenly. Tom leaned forward, peering through the front viewport. Something was reflecting their lights, something that didn't belong in this ancient seabed. As they moved closer, a large metallic object began to take shape in the darkness. "That's not a rock," Tom whispered. Partially buried in sediment lay what appeared to be a massive piece of metal, its surface covered with strange patterns and symbols. It was like nothing Tom had ever seen before. "Are those markings?" Susan asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Tom carefully maneuvered the submersible's robotic arm to collect a small sample from the object's surface. "Whatever this is, it's not from any human civilization. The depth and sediment layers suggest it's been here for centuries, maybe longer." The team spent the next hour documenting their find and collecting more samples before their oxygen reserves forced them to return to the surface. Back on the Horizon, the entire research team gathered around the lab table to examine the mysterious fragments. The metal had a slight bluish tint and was lighter than it should be, considering its apparent strength. "I've never seen anything like this," said Ben, the materials expert. He ran another test and shook his head in disbelief. "This metal doesn't match any known element or alloy on Earth. The molecular structure it's impossible." Tom stared at the strange symbols they had photographed. "We need to report this." Within hours of sending their preliminary findings, the Horizon received urgent communications from the highest levels of government. They were ordered to cease all research on the samples and maintain their position until further notice. 2 days later, a military vessel arrived. It carried a specialized team led by Dr. Alan Reed, a renowned physicist with government clearance, and Captain Lisa Wright of Naval Intelligence. "Dr. Miller," Reed greeted Tom as he boarded the Horizon. "Your discovery has caused quite a stir. I need to see everything you've found immediately." Captain Wright was more direct. "This operation is now classified at the highest level. Your entire team will need to sign non-disclosure agreements." In the lab, Dr. Reed examined the metal fragments with growing excitement. "This confirms our theories," he said quietly to Captain Wright. "We're not alone." "What exactly did we find?" Tom asked. Reed turned to face him. "Based on your data and these samples, we believe you've discovered an extraterrestrial spacecraft." The words hung in the air as Tom and his team tried to process what they were hearing. "You mean aliens?" Susan finally asked. "We prefer the term non-terrestrial intelligence," Captain Wright replied. "But yes, essentially." Over the next week, a massive operation unfolded. Military ships arrived with specialized deep-sea equipment. A security perimeter was established around the site, and Tom's research team was integrated into a new task force under Dr. Reed's leadership. Using advanced sonar mapping, They discovered the true extent of what lay beneath the sediment, an intact spacecraft approximately 400 feet long, with a design unlike anything imagined in human science fiction. It appears the craft crashed or was deliberately hidden here, Dr. Reed explained as they reviewed the latest scans. Based on the sediment layers, it's been here for at least 500 years, possibly much longer. Captain Wright's team of engineers prepared a more advanced submersible to get a closer look at the craft. Tom insisted on being part of the first exploration team. "You discovered it," Reed agreed. "You deserve to be there." The dive was unlike anything Tom had experienced before. As they approached the alien vessel, he felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. The craft's hull was remarkably intact despite its age and the crushing depth. "We're detecting a faint energy signature," said Jessica, one of the military engineers. "That shouldn't be possible after all this time." They carefully explored the exterior of the ship, documenting everything with high-definition cameras. Near what appeared to be an entrance, they found a panel with symbols similar to those on the first fragment Tom had discovered. "I think this might be some kind of access point," Jessica suggested. Using the submersible's robotic arms, they carefully cleared away sediment from the panel. As soon as they touched it, something unexpected happened. Lights beneath the ancient growth flickered dimly and the panel began to glow with a soft blue light. "It's still operational," Reed whispered in awe. Before anyone could respond, a bright pulse of energy shot up from the spacecraft, racing toward the surface at incredible speed. "What was that?" Tom asked, his heart pounding. "Some kind of signal," Jessica replied, checking her instruments. "It appears to be broadcasting on multiple frequencies." Captain Wright's voice came through their communication system, tense and urgent. "Get back to the surface now. That pulse just broke through the water and continued into space. Whatever you did down there, you just sent a message." As their submersible began its ascent, Tom looked back at the ancient spacecraft now glowing with renewed energy in the darkness of the ocean floor. "Who do you think they are?" he asked Reed quietly. The physicist's face was grim. "I don't know. But I think we're going to find out soon. That signal was powerful enough to reach beyond our solar system." Tom felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold water surrounding them. "We just told someone we found their ship," Captain Wright said over the radio, "and I have a feeling they're going to want it back." 6 months had passed since the discovery of the alien spacecraft. What had begun as a small research operation quickly transformed into the largest covert military project in human history. The world's oceans hid many secrets, but none as significant as the massive operation now underway in the Western Pacific. 5 aircraft carriers, dozens of support vessels, and a specially constructed floating platform formed a secure perimeter around the recovery site. From satellites, it looked like a deep-sea mining operation. In reality, it was humanity's first major contact with alien technology. Jack Porter wiped sweat from his forehead as he examined the intricate circuitry removed from the alien craft. As the lead engineer on the salvage team, he had spent countless hours trying to understand how the technology worked without accidentally destroying it. "Any progress?" Dr. Reed asked, entering the laboratory aboard the command ship. Jack nodded, his eyes never leaving the alien device. "It's like nothing we've ever developed. Their power systems don't use electricity as we understand it. It's more like they've harnessed energy at the quantum level." Reed smiled. "That would explain how the ship still had power after 5 centuries underwater." "More than that," Jack said, finally looking up. "I think their hull material actively draws energy from its surroundings. It's not just storing power, it's generating it constantly from the environment." Captain Wright entered the lab, bringing news from the recovery team. "We've managed to attach the lifting cables to the primary structure. If your calculations are correct, we can begin raising it tomorrow." The plan seemed impossible on paper. Raise a 400-foot alien spacecraft from the deepest part of the ocean without destroying it. Engineers had spent months designing a system of massive airbags, cables, and specialized lifting equipment. The operation would require perfect coordination between dozens of ships and hundreds of personnel. At dawn the next day, Jack stood on the command deck, watching as the recovery team prepared for the final lift. Massive winches on the specialized platforms began to turn, taking up slack in the cables that disappeared into the dark water below. "Lifting operation commencing," announced the operation director. "All stations report ready." Hours passed in tense silence as instruments monitored the delicate process. The spacecraft was rising slowly, just a few meters per hour, to prevent structural damage or sudden pressure changes that might affect its systems. By sunset, sonar showed the alien craft had risen halfway to the surface. The team worked through the night, and as dawn broke again, a ripple appeared in the water. "Visual contact," someone shouted. Everyone rushed to the railings as the top of the alien spacecraft broke the surface for the first time in centuries. Water cascaded off its smooth, dark hull, which gleamed with an almost metallic blue sheen in the morning light. Strange symbols and patterns covered its surface, similar to those on the fragments Tom had first discovered. "My God," whispered Captain Wright. "It's beautiful." The lifting continued until the entire craft was suspended in the massive cradle they had constructed. Even partially covered in marine growth, the ship's elegant design was apparent. It had a streamlined shape, with no visible seams or joints, as if the entire structure had been grown rather than built. Over the next few days, the recovery team secured the spacecraft to the floating platform, which began its slow journey to a specially constructed facility on a remote island. International agreements had been signed, bringing together scientists and military experts from around the world under a unified command structure. What had been found belonged to no single nation. It belonged to all of humanity. At the secure facility, teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock to understand the alien technology. Jack led the efforts to access the ship's interior, which had remained sealed despite their best attempts. "The molecular structure of the hull changes when we apply certain energy frequencies," he explained during a briefing. "It's almost like it's responding to specific commands." Tom Miller, who had been invited to join the research team after the initial discovery, suggested, "What if it's keyed to respond to its creators? Maybe it needs a specific biological signature." This insight led to a breakthrough. By combining various frequencies with patterns observed in the ship's external controls, they managed to create a section of the hull that became temporarily permeable. "It's ready," Jack announced 3 weeks later. "We can enter the ship." The first exploration team consisted of Jack, Tom, Dr. Reed, and 2 military specialists with advanced sensor equipment. They wore specialized containment suits as a precaution against unknown biological or radiological hazards. As they approached the opening they had created, Tom felt his heart pounding. "We're about to be the first humans to enter an alien spacecraft," he said, his voice filled with wonder despite his nervousness. The interior was dark until their presence triggered soft lighting that gradually brightened to reveal a curved corridor. The air was breathable according to their instruments, but they kept their suits sealed as they moved deeper into the ship. The craft's internal design defied human architectural concepts. Corridors curved and merged in ways that seemed to maximize space while creating a natural flow. Surfaces responded to their presence, illuminating their path as if the ship were alive and aware. "Look at this," Dr. Reed called out, standing before what appeared to be a control center. Chairs, or what they assumed were chairs, were designed for bodies different from human proportions. Displays activated as they approached, showing symbols and diagrams that shifted and changed. Jack approached one of the panels, studying it intently. These interfaces seemed to respond to proximity and thought patterns. It's like they built their technology to be an extension of their bodies and minds. In another chamber, they discovered what appeared to be a data storage system. After several days of careful study, they managed to extract information that began to tell the story of the ship and its creators. "According to what we've translated so far," Dr. Reed explained during a top-level briefing, "this was an exploratory vessel from a civilization that calls themselves something we're translating as the Unity. They visited Earth approximately 500 years ago during a mission to chart this region of the galaxy." "Why did they leave the ship behind?" asked the project director. Jack brought up a simulation based on the ship's damage records. The data suggests they suffered a catastrophic system failure during their survey of Earth's oceans. The crew appears to have abandoned ship using some kind of emergency transport technology. They intended to return with a recovery team, but something must have prevented that. Captain Wright looked concerned. And now we've activated their beacon. Dr. Reed nodded grimly. Yes, we've essentially told them we found their property, and based on the technology we're seeing, they're significantly more advanced than we are. How much more advanced? Asked a general sitting at the back of the room. Jack hesitated before answering. The materials and systems in this ship are at least several centuries beyond our current technology. Maybe more. Then we better learn as much as we can, the general replied, before they come back to claim what's theirs. Tom looked through the viewing window at the alien craft below, now surrounded by research stations and equipment. Humanity had just entered a new age, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they might have started something they weren't prepared to finish. 8 months had passed since the recovery of the alien spacecraft. In that time, humanity had made technological leaps that would have normally taken decades. Governments around the world had formed an unprecedented alliance, pooling resources and knowledge to prepare for the possibility that the ship's owners might return. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when every major observatory on Earth detected the objects entering the solar system. 7 massive vessels, each many times larger than the recovered craft, appeared just beyond the orbit of Jupiter. They moved with impossible speed and precision, decelerating rapidly as they approached Mars. In the command center of the newly established Earth Defense Headquarters, alarms blared as data poured in from space monitoring stations. Multiple unknown vessels have entered the solar system, reported the radar officer, her voice steady despite the tension filling the room. They match no known configurations and are not responding to any communication attempts. General Harris, appointed to lead the international defense effort, studied the main screen with a grim expression. How long until they reach Earth? At their current speed, less than 48 hours, sir. The general turned to his communications officer. Contact all member nations, Defense Condition 1, and get Dr. Reed and Captain Wright in here immediately. Within hours, the world's leaders were in emergency sessions. Military forces went on high alert, and civilians were advised to remain calm while preparations were made for any eventuality. Dr. Reed and Captain Wright arrived at headquarters with Jack Porter and Tom Miller, who had become key members of the research team. The design of those ships matches the technology we found in the recovered vessel, Jack explained, analyzing the images. They're definitely from the same civilization. They're called the Vex, Tom added. At least that's our closest translation from their records. We've learned a lot about their language and culture from the ship's database. General Harris nodded. Can we communicate with them? We believe so, Dr. Reed replied. We've developed a basic translation system based on the ship's communication protocols. Then let's try to talk before they get any closer, the general ordered. Using the most powerful transmitters available, Earth sent a carefully worded message in the Vex language, explaining the discovery of their vessel and expressing peaceful intentions. The response came 12 hours later as the alien fleet took up position in orbit around Mars. A communication signal matched perfectly to Earth's broadcasting systems, appeared on screens worldwide. The being that appeared was humanoid, but clearly not human. It had pale blue skin, large dark eyes, and a slender frame. When it spoke, the translation system converted its words to human language. I am Commander Nax of the Vex Unity, the alien announced. You have discovered and contaminated a sacred vessel belonging to our people. This is a grave violation of universal law. In the command center, leaders struggled to form a response. Dr. Reed stepped forward. Let me speak to them. I've studied their culture most extensively. With approval granted, Reed addressed the alien commander. We found your vessel abandoned and damaged. We sought only to learn and understand. We meant no disrespect to your people or your property. The alien's expression was difficult to read, but its tone remained cold. Your primitive understanding is irrelevant. The vessel of eternal light is a holy relic containing the essence of our ancestors. It was not abandoned but placed in sanctuary during an emergency. It was to remain untouched until properly retrieved. We had no way of knowing, Reed began. Your ignorance does not excuse your actions, Commander Nax interrupted. We have monitored your species for centuries. You were deemed too primitive and violent for formal contact. Now you have forced our hand by interfering with what is not yours. General Harris stepped into view. What do you want from us? Return the vessel immediately, in its original condition, with all materials removed from it. We will then depart your system and leave your world to its own devices. The general exchanged glances with his advisors. Everyone knew returning the ship in its original condition was impossible. Parts had been removed for study, systems had been modified to understand them, and the knowledge gained could not be unlearned. We may need time to prepare the vessel for transport, the general said carefully. Commander Nax's eyes narrowed. You have 48 Earth hours. We will send coordinates for delivery. Any attempt to deceive us will be met with severe consequences. The transmission ended abruptly. In the tense silence that followed, Captain Wright voiced what everyone was thinking. They know we can't return it in its original condition. They're setting us up to fail. I agree, said Tom. From what we've learned of their culture, they place enormous value on their technology. They believe it contains the actual essence of their creators. By studying it, we've committed what they see as a form of desecration. Jack had been quiet, analyzing the transmission data. There's something else. The energy readings from their ships. They're preparing weapon systems. They were ready for conflict before they even contacted us. General Harris called an emergency meeting with world leaders. As they debated their options, Dr. Reed presented his analysis of the situation. Based on everything we've learned from the ship's records, the Vex are a highly advanced civilization, with rigid hierarchical structures and strict cultural protocols. They value order above all else and view younger species as chaotic and dangerous. Can we fight them if necessary? Asked one of the defense ministers. Jack shook his head. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Even with what we've learned, a direct conflict would be devastating. But we have their ship, pointed out another leader. We've learned from it. Could we use that knowledge? Tom brought up data from their research. We've made significant progress understanding their systems. Our scientists have even improved on some of their designs by applying human ingenuity to their base technology. As the debate continued, Captain Wright made a bold suggestion. What if we don't just return their ship? What if we show them what we've done with it? All eyes turned to her. The Vex see us as primitive, she continued. But what if we demonstrate that we've not only understood their technology, but improved it in ways they hadn't considered? It might force them to reconsider their assessment of humanity. It was a dangerous gamble, but with few options available, the leaders agreed to a modified plan. They would prepare the ship for return but also prepare a demonstration of human advancements based on Vex technology. As the deadline approached, Earth made its response. Dr. Reed addressed Commander Nax. We will return your vessel as requested, he stated. However, before we do, we request a formal meeting. There are matters to discuss concerning our species and our place in the greater galactic community. The alien commander seemed surprised by the confident tone. After a pause, he replied, Your request is unusual, but it is granted. Prepare a delegation to board our command vessel. You have 12 hours. As the transmission ended, General Harris looked at Reed with concern. Do you think this will work? I don't know, Reed admitted. But they're curious now. That's better than hostile. Tom watched through the window as teams prepared the recovered spacecraft for its return journey. We're about to find out if we're ready to join a much larger universe, he said quietly. Jack nodded beside him. Whether we're ready or not, it's happening. The real first contact starts now. 12 hours was not much time to prepare for a meeting that could determine the fate of humanity. The command center had transformed into a hive of activity as the chosen delegation prepared for their journey to the Vex flagship. Dr. Reed reviewed his notes one final time, trying to memorize everything they had learned about Vex culture and protocol. Captain Wright supervised the loading of demonstration materials onto the transport shuttle. Tom and Jack worked frantically to perfect their Presentation on Human Adaptations of VEX Technology. "Are you sure this will work?" General Harris asked as he watched the team prepare. Jack looked up from the device he was calibrating. "No, sir, but it's the best chance we have. The VEX value innovation, even if they don't admit it. Their own records show how they've absorbed technologies from other civilizations they've encountered, but always from civilizations they considered worthy," Tom added. "We need to prove we deserve that status." Around the world, military forces remained on high alert. New weapon systems, hastily constructed using principles learned from the alien ship, were deployed to strategic locations. No one believed these preparations would be enough if the VEX decided to attack, but it gave people something to focus on besides fear. In orbit, 6 smaller craft had detached from the main VEX fleet and taken up positions around Earth, monitoring all communications and military movements. Their presence in the sky was visible to the naked eye at night. New, stars that didn't twinkle and moved in perfect formation. The delegation team consisted of 12 members. Dr. Reed and Captain Wright would lead the diplomatic efforts, supported by Tom and Jack for technical expertise. Representatives from the major world powers and scientific disciplines completed the group. As they boarded the shuttle, Tom looked out the viewport at the recovered alien ship that had started everything. It had been cleaned and repaired as much as possible, though many sections remained visibly altered by human study. "Do you think they know what we've done?" he asked Jack quietly. "They must suspect," Jack replied. "But I don't think they know how much we've learned or how quickly we've adapted their technology. That's our advantage." The journey to the VEX command ship took 3 hours. As they approached, the true scale of the alien vessel became apparent. It was massive, at least 2 miles long, with a design that seemed to flow like liquid metal, frozen in space. "It's beautiful," whispered one of the scientists. A tractor beam guided their shuttle into a docking bay larger than a football stadium. When the doors opened, they were met by 4 VEX guards in what appeared to be ceremonial armor. The aliens were taller than humans by at least a foot, with slender limbs and movements that seemed almost too fluid to be natural. "Follow," one of them commanded in heavily accented English. The translation devices the team carried provided a more nuanced version. "You will accompany us to the high chamber. Do not deviate from the assigned path." The interior of the VEX ship was a marvel of engineering and artistry. Corridors seemed to shift and change as they walked, with walls that rippled with subtle patterns of light. Tom noticed that everything responded to the presence of the VEX themselves, but remained static when humans passed. "Their technology is integrated with their biology," he whispered to Jack. "Just like we suspected." After walking for what seemed like miles through the labyrinthine ship, they arrived at an enormous chamber. Commander Nax waited on a raised platform, surrounded by what appeared to be military and scientific advisors. Behind them floated a 3-dimensional display showing Earth from multiple angles. "You stand before the Unity Council," announced one of the guards. "Speak with truth and clarity." Dr. Reed stepped forward and bowed in the manner they had learned from the ship's cultural database. "We thank you for this opportunity to address the Unity. We come seeking understanding and peaceful resolution." Commander Nax's expression remained unreadable. "You come because you have no choice. Our scans indicate your species has weaponized components of our sacred vessel. This is a severe transgression. We have studied your technology," Reed acknowledged, "but our primary goal has always been understanding, not weaponization." "Your intentions are irrelevant," another VEX official stated. "The contamination has occurred. The vessel must be purified, and the knowledge contained within it must be removed from your possession." Captain Wright stepped forward. "With respect, that's not possible. We cannot unlearn what we have discovered." "Then there is no peaceful resolution," Commander Nax declared. "Your species will surrender all derived technologies and submit to memory extraction procedures for all who had contact with the vessel." The human delegation exchanged alarmed glances. Memory extraction sounded ominous. Jack decided it was time for their demonstration. "Before you make your final judgment, we would like to show you something." With a nod from Reed, Jack and Tom set up the device they had brought, a small cube about 6 inches across. It looked simple, but inside was some of humanity's most advanced technology, created by combining Vex principles with human innovation. This device uses principles we learned from your ship, Jack explained, activating it. A holographic display appeared above the cube, showing complex equations and diagrams. But we've modified the underlying quantum matrix to improve efficiency by 38%. The Vex officials murmured among themselves, clearly surprised. Impossible, stated one of their scientists. Your species lacks the neural capacity to comprehend such concepts, let alone improve them. Tom smiled slightly. That's where you're wrong. Humans may be younger than the Vex, but we adapt quickly. We see patterns and possibilities that others might miss. To prove their point, Jack expanded the holographic display to show a comparison between the original Vex design and the human modification. Even to the aliens, the improvements were undeniable. Commander Nack stepped closer, examining the display with intense focus. This is unexpected. We have more to show you, Reed said, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. We don't want to fight the Vex. We want to learn from you, and perhaps in some small ways offer new perspectives that might benefit both our civilizations. For several tense moments, the Vex leadership conferred among themselves in their own language, too complex for the translation devices to fully capture. Finally, Commander Nax addressed them again. Your demonstration is notable. It requires further evaluation. He made a gesture, and a new group of Vex entered the chamber. These wore different garments that the humans guessed represented scientific rather than military status. You will present all adaptations you have made to our technology. Our scientists will determine if they represent true innovation or merely fortunate accidents. It wasn't peace, but it was a reprieve. For the next several hours, Jack and Tom worked with the Vex scientists, showing them how humans had approached the alien technology from different angles, sometimes finding solutions that the Vex themselves had not considered. Meanwhile, back on Earth, final preparations were underway. Despite the ongoing negotiations, General Harris had ordered the completion of a defensive perimeter using the new weapon systems. Testing had shown them to be effective, at least in theory, against the type of energy signatures the Vex ships emitted. If diplomacy fails, he told his officers, we need to be ready to protect our planet for as long as possible. In orbital installations hastily constructed over the past months, pilots trained on spacecraft built using reverse-engineered Vex technology. They were few in number and untested in actual combat, but they represented humanity's best hope for defense. As the human delegation continued their presentations aboard the Vex command ship, both species prepared for the possibility that words might give way to weapons. The next 24 hours would determine whether first contact led to a new era of cooperation or the first interstellar war in human history. 3 days had passed since the human delegation boarded the Vex command ship. On Earth, people waited anxiously for news. The Vex vessels remained in their positions, silent and watchful, giving no indication of their intentions. In the command center, General Harris received regular updates from Captain Wright, transmitted during brief approved communication windows. The negotiations had reached a critical point. The Vex scientists were genuinely impressed by human adaptations of their technology, but the military leadership remained suspicious and unwilling to view humans as equals. They're divided on how to proceed, the general explained to his officers. That gives us time, but not much. The silence broke at dawn on the 4th day. Without warning, 3 of the Vex monitoring vessels descended into Earth's atmosphere, taking positions above major cities. They're powering weapons systems, shouted the radar officer. Energy signatures matching what we saw in their ship's database. General Harris didn't hesitate. Deploy defensive measures, launch the interceptors. Around the world, the newly developed defense systems activated. Massive energy shields, based on Vex technology, but modified by human engineers, sprang to life over population centers. From hidden bases, 36 fighter craft rose into the sky. They looked nothing like traditional military jets. Their sleek, almost organic design clearly showed their alien inspiration. Aboard the Vex command ship, alarms sounded throughout the corridors. The human delegation was quickly escorted to a secure room while Commander Nax consulted with his officers. "What's happening?" Dr. Reed demanded of their guards. "Unity protocol has been activated," one replied coldly. "The cleansing has begun." Tom and Jack exchanged worried glances. The cleansing could only mean one thing. The Vex had decided to attack. In the high chamber, Commander Nax issued orders to his fleet. "Begin targeted strikes on their military installations. Avoid civilian casualties where possible. We are not destroyers, but guardians of order." One of his officers objected. "The humans have deployed defense systems using our own technology. They should not be allowed to keep such knowledge." "They will not," Nax assured him. "Once their resistance is broken, we will implement full purification protocols." The first attacks came swiftly. Beams of intense energy lanced down from the Vex vessels, targeting military bases and the new defense installations. But the human shields held, barely. The modified Vex technology, enhanced with human innovations, proved more resilient than the aliens had anticipated. Earth's fighters engaged the lower Vex vessels. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the human pilots used tactics that the Vex had never encountered: unpredictable maneuvers, coordinated feints, and aggressive close-range attacks that their larger ships struggled to counter. "They fight unusually," observed a Vex commander. "There is no logical pattern to their movements." In orbit, Commander Nax watched with growing concern as the initial assault failed to achieve its objectives. "Send in the second wave," he ordered. "Target their power infrastructure." On the command ship, the human delegation remained under guard, but Jack had been working quietly, examining the room's technology. "I think I can access their systems," he whispered to Tom. "The interfaces are similar to what we studied." "Do it," Tom replied. "We need to contact Earth somehow." Using techniques they had developed while studying the recovered ship, Jack managed to create a small breach in the Vex communication network. It wasn't enough to send a message, but it allowed them to monitor the battle unfolding below. What they saw gave them hope. Earth's defenses were holding better than anyone could have expected. The human fighters, though taking heavy losses, had managed to disable one of the Vex attack vessels. They didn't expect us to understand their shield. Harmonics, Jack realized watching the battle data. Our modifications created frequencies they've never dealt with before. Back on Earth, General Harris received encouraging reports from the front lines. "Their attacks are weakening," reported a field commander. "The shields are holding at 62% capacity." But victory was far from certain. 2 more Vex battleships had moved into attack position, preparing to join the fight with weapons significantly more powerful than the first wave. In the secure room aboard the command ship, Dr. Reed made a decision. "We need to speak with Commander Nax now." When the guards refused, Captain Wright took a more direct approach. Using combat techniques she'd never thought she'd need in space, she overpowered one guard while Tom and Jack created a distraction. With the guard's access device, they managed to open the doors and make their way toward the high chamber. Alarms blared as they moved through the corridors, but most of the ship's crew was focused on the battle below. When they reached the command center, they found Commander Nax watching holographic displays of the conflict. "This is not necessary," Reed shouted as they entered. "We can find a solution that doesn't involve destruction." Vex guards moved to capture them, but Commander Nax held up his hand. "Let them speak. Their resistance has earned that much." "Your attacks aren't working as well as you expected, are they?" Jack said, gesturing to the displays. "That's because we didn't just copy your technology. We evolved it." Tom stepped forward. "The Vex pride themselves on finding the perfect solution to every problem. But humans excel at finding unexpected solutions, approaches no one else would consider." Captain Wright added, "We don't want to fight you, but we will defend our world with everything we have." Commander Nax studied the humans with new intensity. "You have indeed shown unexpected capabilities, but the contamination remains. The sacred vessel, Can be returned, Reed interrupted. But the knowledge we've gained is part of us now. Instead of seeing that as contamination, why not see it as evolution? Isn't that what the Unity is about? Incorporating the best of all civilizations? For several tense moments, Commander Nax was silent. Then he turned to one of his officers. Cease the attack. Hold positions. The officer looked shocked. Commander, the High Council's orders. I will explain to the Council. Nax replied firmly. These humans have demonstrated qualities worthy of consideration. The attack vessels withdrew to higher orbits, and the fighting stopped as suddenly as it had begun. On Earth, people emerged from shelters, looking up at skies that now held both terror and wonder. In the following days, a new agreement was negotiated. The recovered ship would be returned to the Vex, but with a difference. It would serve as a joint research vessel, where humans and Vex could work together to explore each other's approaches to science and technology. Your species is young, Commander Nax told the human delegation during the signing ceremony. But you have shown innovation and courage that has impressed even the Unity. Perhaps there is much we can learn from each other. 1 month later, Tom stood at a viewport in the new International Space Center, watching as human and Vex engineers worked together on a joint project. The recovered ship floated nearby, now serving as a symbol of cooperation rather than conflict. Do you think they've really accepted us? He asked Jack, who was reviewing plans for a new propulsion system. Jack looked up at the massive Vex vessels still in orbit. They no longer seemed threatening, but rather protective. I think they're still figuring us out, and we're figuring them out too. But that's how all good relationships start, isn't it? Dr. Reed joined them, smiling as he watched the activity outside. The Vex came to reclaim what they thought was just an old ship. Instead, they found a new ally. Captain Wright, now General Wright and Earth's liaison to the Vex Unity, nodded in agreement. And we thought we'd just found an interesting piece of metal in the ocean. Instead, we found our place in a much larger universe. As they spoke, a new vessel rose from Earth's atmosphere, the first ship built jointly by humans and Vex, combining the best of both civilizations' technologies. It gleamed in the sunlight as it prepared for its maiden voyage to explore the solar system that both species now shared. Tom watched it with pride, knowing that what had started as a potential war had transformed into something much more valuable, a new beginning for both worlds.